Hey everybody, this is Neil Ronahan here with another vintage review. This one's not really that vintage, but I guess it's from an old system and from a bygone era. It's Metroid Samus Returns, the 2017 release from Mercury Steam and Nintendo. Here's, in its entirety, my review from September 2017. Metroid Samus Returns has a lot riding on it. Right off the bat, this 3DS game holds the distinction of being the first 2D Metroid from Nintendo since 2004. Second off, the development team is one with multiple things to prove. As Nintendo newcomer Mercury Steam is seeking to prove their worth after Castlevania Lords of Shadow, and Yoshio Sakamoto and his team at Nintendo are setting out to recover from the fallout of the 2010 Wii release Metroid Other M. Samus Returns, a remake of the 1991 Game Boy game Metroid 2, Return of Samus, has big shoes to fill. And fortunately, it expertly fills all of these giant Metroid-shaped shoes, and then some. Metroid Samus Returns is a brilliant entry in a beloved series that brings together the fuzzy nostalgia of old Metroid games while clawing repeatedly at a bright new future that will hopefully come to fruition. Samus Returns is less a remake and more a complete reimagining of the second Metroid game. Retaining just the broad strokes of Metroid 2's monochromatic origins, it takes you through the same journey through planet SR-388 to eradicate all of the Metroids on their home planet. Outside of that basic structure and general planetary layout, this is, however, a brand new game. New power-ups, primarily from other entries in the series, appear and the world is littered with oodles of new secrets. Unlike the series' previous remake, Metroid Zero Mission, this doesn't hew as close to the original work, which works to the new version's advantage. The new labyrinthine take on SR-388 is a large part of why Samus Returns is so dang good, but the freshly added mechanics are key to why this feels like such an important step forward for 2D Metroid. Combat gets a major and much needed shot in the arm. The new melee counter ability, which lets Samus deftly knock away and stun an enemy with a well-timed button press, is integral to success, especially early on. This simple addition transforms Metroid into a more close encounter-focused experience, where you are far more encouraged to get up close and personal with enemies as opposed to keeping distance with long-range attacks. While some of that magic wears off as you get deeper into SR-388, get familiar power-ups that boost Samus' weaponry to her regular late-game world-wrecking potential, the introduction of the melee counter is one of the best elements of Samus Returns. Melee countering does appear to maybe be too much of the focus early on, but as the adventure continues and your arsenal grows, it soon becomes just one of the many helpful abilities you can call on when needed. A lot of boss fights do build to waiting for the melee counter opening, but it's much more just one method you can use to defeat the hordes of Metroid you face off against than the one true path of victory. Aeon abilities are another major new addition, and for better or worse, this is the only place where truly brand new power-ups are found in this remake. These 4 abilities, slowly found throughout the first few areas, provide a helpful boost in a way that is reminiscent of Nintendo's old Super Guide concept. Scan Pulse reveals map tiles and hidden blocks nearby you, which is helpful if you're stuck or looking for that last power-up in an area. Lightning Armor provides another layer of defense, especially useful for challenging bosses and volatile areas. Beam Burst is a super powerful, rapid-fire gun attack that can take down virtually any enemy. Phase Drift slows down time, which opens up the possibility for some interesting later game puzzles that require the use of this power. Each one is tied to the new Aeon Meter, which can be expanded with hidden power-ups. Some might lament the addition of these challenge-reducing power-ups, but they actually help make Samus Returns more difficult by default. Unlike more recent Metroid games, this rarely tells you where to go next, letting you explore and get lost in the cavernous world. Outside of the new touches, the game just feels like Metroid, mixing together a lot of the series' history into this remake. Power-ups not found in Metroid 2 originally show up here, letting you use the Grapple Beam, Charge Beam, and Super Missiles to add to the complexity of the maze-like world. While it's a little disappointing that no new-to-the-series power-ups show up outside of the Aeon abilities, it's nothing that holds back the majesty of this adventure. The journey to eradicate the Metroid takes more twists and turns this time around, with added bosses and sections. It took me a shockingly long amount of time to complete my first run-through. I rolled credits at about the 13-hour mark with 75% completion, which didn't include the time spent dying on some tricky late-game foes. Returning to the game, even after you beat it for 100% item completion, is made significantly more engaging and fun thanks to the well-placed warp statues in each area. You still need to backtrack, but a lot of the monotony of it is excised. The Warp Edition is another astute modern tweak made by Nintendo and Mercury Steam. Potentially helpful is the notation feature, but the small map on the touchscreen makes it hard to mark anything too specific. I'm even using an Excel model. Additionally, pulling out the stylus to try to mark anything down often slowed down the game far too much for my liking. It's a nice option to have, but it's just clumsy in practice. After beating the game once comes hard mode, which, well, is certainly a lot harder. Enemies do way more damage, and the game is far more punishing. If you own Metroid series amiibo, including the pair of brand new ones coming out on the same day as this game, you can unlock other bonuses. With the new Metroid amiibo, you can unlock Fusion Mode, which is a slightly more difficult hard mode that lets you play wearing Samus' suit from Metroid Fusion. The other Samus amiibo unlock bonus energy, missile, and Aeon tanks during play, as well as art galleries and a sound test after completion. If you don't have access to the amiibo, you're only missing out on superfluous options. Unless you're the type to replay through games on their hardest difficulties, the amiibo usage is ultimately just a nice bonus. Going into Metroid Samus Returns, I was hopeful and optimistic, but given the past decade of Metroid, it was hard not to be a skeptic. After beating Metroid Samus Returns, my skepticism just vanished and washed away, mostly thanks to the fact that this 3DS game pays a loving homage to the greatness of past entries, while adding enough new elements to feel like a fresh and wonderful modern experience. With their powers combined, Nintendo and Mercury Steam basically struck gold with this video game. Samus Returns is a dynamite entry in the fabled series, and deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as Metroid Zero Mission and Super Metroid. If you've been waiting for a new 2D Metroid game from Nintendo for more than a decade, you owe it to yourself to play this video game. So that's Metroid Samus Returns. Reading through that, I agree with a lot of what I said 4 years ago. Metroid Samus Returns is a hell of a video game, and I'm just starting a replay now in a line with our Metroid Saga Game Club at Nintendo World Report as we get closer to Metroid Dread, and I'm really encouraged. I had that suspicion that maybe I'll go back to Samus Returns and not be as hot on it as I was when I reviewed it, but I still think that game just absolutely rules. It's really fun to move around as Samus. I feel more powerful than ever as Samus in this video game, and I still think the melee counter rules. I think the melee counter will also benefit a lot from just being a part of the arsenal, as I say in the review. In Metroid Dread, I think that'll benefit from the fact that they did all the hard work of introducing the melee counter and kind of having it be a focus in Samus Returns, that in Dread it'll just be another tool that you have, which is exciting. And it's looking from what we've seen the Phantom Cloak for Metroid Dread, that we'll see new power-ups. That's another issue that I've had in the past with Samus Returns. We'll hopefully see new power-ups in the next game. And really, I had some concerns as you can see in the writing, and I definitely recall it, having read my writing now. I didn't know if Samus Returns coming out so late in the 3DS's life, the Switch was already out for like half a year when it came out on 3DS, that maybe it wouldn't sell enough and Nintendo wouldn't go back to Metroid at all, but Metroid Dread's here, or it's coming very soon. It's probably done. It's very close to release. They're not gonna cancel it in the 11th hour. That would be a tragedy. But maybe the 2D Metroid series is gonna be back, and it really is just incredibly exciting to think that there was some skepticism and some potentially some not so nice things that we could see happening with the Metroid franchise in the past decade. And well, we got Samus Returns, and that was great, and Metroid Dread looks like it's going to carry on that legacy, and then we'll see if Prime 4 ever comes out. Anyway, thank you for listening to and watching this vintage review of a 4-year-old game. Maybe the name of the series that we're doing here could use some work, but it's still vintage. It's just not the kind of vintage that you break out at a party. Maybe you wait for the 10-year review, and then that's the good bourbon or something like that. I don't know. Thanks for watching. Looking forward to Metroid Dread. Come join us, talk about the Metroid Saga games throughout the rest of the summer, leading up until Metroid Dread's release. We have a Discord. Go there. It's a fun time. We're talking all about the games. Bye.
This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.